Okay, here we are. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown, and if you're new, welcome to you and everyone else. What's going on? I don't know if you can hear it, but there are fireworks going off in the background. I'm recording on the evening of 4th of July, and there is an unusual amount of fireworks being lit off in my neighborhood. I've lived here for, this is my 4th year that I've been in this house on the 4th of July, and I don't remember ever hearing this many fireworks. I don't know how much is coming through this recording, if you'll hear any of it, but if you do, that's what's going on. I guess maybe because there's no events planned, people are compensating with home fireworks. I don't know. I know fireworks are legal here in Pennsylvania, and I don't know, it seems like people are going to town. I'm finding it a little bit disconcerting, I got to admit. Only because everything's just so weird right now to have all these explosions going off. I don't know, I guess I'm not in the most celebratory of moods. I don't mean to be a downer for other people who are celebrating the holiday. I don't want to bring anybody else down, but I don't know. I'm feeling a little weird, my friends. I'm feeling a little weird. Fortunately, I do have an excellent talk today with Todd Norian to share with you, which I'm going to tell you about in just a bit. But first, I'm feeling weird not just because of the fireworks. I'm feeling weird because it seems like we've entered, at least where I am, this new phase in the pandemic that has to do with negotiating and negotiating how much you're going to open up your COVID pod. We've been just me, my wife, and my 2 daughters, we kept it closed for several months, as did some of our friends and their kids. And we decided that we need to let our daughters be able to see a friend. We each one of them had one friend that we've invited into the pod. And it's based on a feeling of confidence we have with the parents, and the feeling that we've all been diligent and that it's an okay thing for us to do this. And we're still keeping some distance with one, but the other we've kind of let it go because we feel very confident and they feel confident, and we've shared, we have an overlap in our pod Venn diagram now. But I have to admit there's some strange stuff to how we're deciding who we're going to invite in and who we're not, the people we feel more confident or less confident with. And it's really what I was writing about in my new blog post, which you can go read. It's up on the site now. It's called Faith in the Mystery. And you see, in this moment where we have to make this decision, where we have to decide if we're going to let our children have a friend that they can play with in person, in this moment, I couldn't rely on the health experts to make this decision for me, frankly. I'm paying very close attention and wanting to really follow what the experts say, even though it's hard to understand because there's confusing information from experts. But in this moment where we have to decide, okay, do we think it's okay for our daughter to break the social distance some with this one particular person? Do we think that that's okay? I can't rely upon data or, health experts. It's I have to make a choice in me, because they can't give me a clear answer. I have to make a choice inside myself as to whether or not I think it's okay for my kid to do this. Is it a reasonable enough risk? And frankly, we decided to do it because our kids need to be with a friend. And yes, we kept some distance, but still, we felt it was the right choice, and I feel good about that. But that choice came from somewhere in me. I couldn't rely upon external authorities to give me that answer. And there's something there where I have to have faith. I have to have faith in something, and I have faith in the yoga that I do and teach, and in my sense of self and who I want to be in the world. And that faith is essential to me feeling like I can make a good choice in those moments. So in any case, you can read the blog. It's up. You can go read it. And frankly, today's talk with Todd Norian is very much about this, because it is about Tantra and integration and how having to make these choices and live out our lives and deal with our shadows, as Todd calls them, that is the yoga. That's the whole thing. So I was very excited to get a chance to talk with Todd. He's got a new book coming out on Tantra, and I knew a little bit about him, and then he had spent a lot of years at Kripalu, and I had a feeling he could maybe give me an inside perspective, and he surely did. And just in this whole ongoing consideration of gurus and lineage and tradition and what to make of it all, I really felt like this conversation with Todd was helpful in this regard, and I'm excited that you're going to get to listen to it today. Real quick before we do, let me check in with any of you who are managing studios, or maybe owning a studio, or maybe you're starting something new. I know of a number of different centers that have reopened and are starting classes depending on where you are. If you are starting to register people for classes, or even if you just need something for yourself, maybe you want to get more organized, maybe now's a time to reevaluate your back-end systems. Maybe you would want to check out today's sponsor, Karmasoft. If you've been around, you've heard me talk about Karmasoft many times. It's the studio management software that I used when I had my center in Brooklyn. The owner, Rudy Sinecal, he's been on the show. You can go back and listen to the episode. You can hear about him and the company and why I felt so strongly about it and was such a supporter of it. And I'm really grateful that they've been such a great supporter of the show, because I think that right now, with everything going on, you need somebody who's going to work with you. You need somebody who can give you different options and can tailor things to your needs. And I know that Rudy and his team at Karmasoft can do that. So maybe now's the time to check it out. Go to karmasoftonline.com. Also, this episode is brought to you in support by Podcast Premium subscribers Arn Breck and Elizabeth Hurley. We are so very grateful to all the people who choose to be Podcast Premium subscribers. Not only do you get access to the full archives, but it is the best way to help support the show. And we're so thankful for people like Arn and Elizabeth. And if you want to find out more about becoming a Podcast Premium subscriber, or you want to find out about any of my stuff, my live stream classes or my teacher's call or any of my stuff, you can find all of it at jbrownyoga.com. Okay, can you hear it? There's still all these fireworks going on. Unbelievable. I wonder how much has come through. If you've heard it going off in the background the whole time, I'm sorry if it was distracting, but it's kind of distracting to me too. Do what we can. I am going to touch base with you on the other side. I want to tell you about a few things that are happening on the show over the next few weeks. So if you want to stick around to the other side, you can hear that there. But for now, let's go ahead and get to this. Let's listen to this conversation that I had with Todd Norian. Hi, Todd.
Hi, Jay. Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you too. Such a crazy moment that we find ourselves in. I feel like I have to say that every time I talk to anyone right now.
I know, it's really crazy, unprecedented.
I know, but
Yeah.
I am still carrying on with things, including this show.
Yeah.
And, you know, I reached out to you after I looked at your bio, first and foremost, because, you know, I taught at Kripalu for a few years.
Oh, great. Okay.
But it was later, much later. Like, I think it must have been around, I don't know, 2004, 5, and 6 in there. And, you know, I always heard all these tales and about when it was an ashram. And I've brought it up a bunch of times on the show. And a couple of people I know, like, were around and went there some.
Yeah.
But nobody, like, lived there like you did.
Oh, wow.
So okay. you were somebody I thought, oh, that could really fill in a picture of that place before people know Kripalu what it is now, you know?
Yeah.
And then also, I just want to say, I've been reading your book.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
You're very welcome. I'm a good way through. I haven't finished it yet, but there was so much in there, just in terms of Tantra and in terms of how it seemed to me that your consideration of yoga in the book was so linked to your experience and sorting out your life experience.
Yes, absolutely.
So anyways, that's my introduction to this conversation, because those are the things that jumped out at me most when I was sort of looking into you and then sent you the email. And I'm so glad you got back to me. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, you are very welcome. Thanks. It's an honor.
Well, I'm curious, you know, I said that you were at Kripalu for a long time, but did your entrance into spiritual practice or yoga happen before you went to Kripalu?
A little bit. I mean, I remember the exact moment when I heard about yoga, and I was 19 and I was piano performance major at University of Michigan because I had gone into music because I loved it. And I was disillusioned with classical music and wasn't doing so good. The competition was just stressful and way too much pressure for me. And I had always loved jazz. My dad had a jazz orchestra while I was growing up. And so I was always around it. And that was my favorite thing. I mean, I had my first band when I was 11 years old, and but I loved classical too. So I was kind of flunking out actually after a year and a half or 2 years. So I was in a big transition myself. I went home for the summer, and actually a family friend. He was 4 years older than me, so you know, people a little bit older like that, you don't really get to see them because by the time I was a freshman in high school, he had just graduated. But he was a friend of the family, and he was a dancer, and I hadn't seen him in a long time. And we happened to meet at this mutual friend's summer cottage for a weekend, water skiing and all that. Anyway, he looked radiant. Like I've never seen anyone just so vibrant, and like there was a light around him. And I asked him, and he said, "Oh, I do yoga." I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, I live at this intentional community." And I said, "Well, what is it? What's it called?" And he said, "Kripalu." He invited me there, and that was it. And I went and began my jazz studies at the University of Miami. And that was going well. But every summer I would drive up to Eastman School of Music because they had a great summer jazz program. So I would do this heroic drive. I mean, it was like over 24 hours of driving. And on my last time that I did it, I just graduated and I was going back for my fellowship. They gave me a free ride to do a master's program as a jazz teacher. So I was like all set. And but I had started doing a little yoga before. Like I met my friend, and then when I went down to University of Miami, there just happened to be a yoga studio right across the street from the university.
And I'm sorry, what year is it?
This is 1980.
Okay, so 1980. Because again, I always like to pin the time.
Yeah.
Nobody knew what yoga was in 1980.
No, I know. But a lot of, BKS Iyengar did a lot of trainings, and he had this whole following of his senior advanced teachers. And this was one of those teachers. I still know, I'm in touch with them today. Really, it's Sam Dwarkis and Bobby Golden. And Bobby is still teaching there. And it was the Iyengar Yoga Institute of South Miami. So they both just took me under their wing. And so it was 1982. I'm driving back from Eastman School of Music to start my fellowship. I stop off at Kripalu because at that time it was in Pennsylvania. And I said hi to my friend, and I felt like I landed in heaven. Like I did not even know what was going on. I drive up my old beat up Chevette Chevrolet car without a floor. And these two angels walk up. They're guys dressed in all white. Their eyes were as radiant as my friend's eyes were when I saw them a couple years earlier. And they opened the car door for me, and they just said in the most, should we say, let's see, I'm thinking of the herb valerian. Oh, in the Valium voice. Okay, that's sort of the yoga voice.
Okay.
Welcome to Kripalu. We're glad you made it. Welcome home. And that was it. I mean, I just felt so much kindness and sort of group spirit. And everybody was like so focused on health and then service and love and all the teachings of love.
So that wasn't in the Berkshires, though. You said that was in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, a little hick town called Summit Station. I mean, it was like not even on the map.
I see. And was Amrit there?
Well, he was traveling, and what happened was I was there for 2 days, and then my friend said, hey, why don't you stay for this course? It's a 10-day course. It was the first time they offered it, called Quest for the Limitless You. And he said it would still allow you 3 days to get back to do your fellowship. Because I had like a window of 13 days. So I said, God, I'd love to do it. So I did. And on about day 3, the guru came back. He really was like a guru then. I mean, he was the whole time he was at Kripalu until he got fired. And he gave morning sessions and evening sessions for about 7 days straight. And I had never experienced an energy like that before. I felt so many things. I felt bliss. I felt waves of tears. I felt like a palpable thickness of energy in the air. And my heart just burst open. I mean, that is really what happened. So I talk about that. Also,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm curious about that, what you just said, that experience that you had in those sessions. I'm wondering, did you associate that with the guru, with him? Like that was coming from him, or?
No, I mean, I remember asking my friend, first of all, what is this place? And then he gave me a little history of what Kripalu was and the guru of the guru. And so what's a guru? I had no idea. I mean, I was just so green. I'd only done yoga for, a little while. And so I came to learn about it through those 10 days. And partly the program itself opened us up. I mean, it was a huge catharsis of clearing out all of our relationships, including relationships with our parents. And we were studying Jean Houston's book, The Possible Human. She just came out with it. And it was like the cutting edge of human evolution at that time. I mean, she's still like what does she call herself? A psychic evolutionist or something like that. But so we did all these different kinds of psychological exercises blended with yoga practice, deep pranayama, deep meditation. And on top of that, the Guru Shakti. So,
and like, how big were those meetings? Like, how many people were in those sessions with the guru? Were they big?
I'd say there were about 200. I mean, we had 120 in our course alone, and we pretty much filled up the place. It wasn't as big as the Shadowbrook building in Lenox right now.
Yeah,
it was big enough for about 120 guests, and I would say, 70 or 80 residents. So,
well, it's interesting to me because I read about this in your book, and it really resonated with me because it was around the same age that I first heard about yoga too. And it did seem like it represented like a doorway into, I don't know, freeing myself of all these identifiers.
Yeah.
Like who I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I got that from your book too. Like the call that you made to your parents to tell them that you weren't coming back. That really resonated with me. I was like, I had that call too. Not exactly the same, but just that kind of conversation with my dad, like who didn't understand why I was choosing to like go in this direction that he had no frame of reference for.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's what they say about the spiritual journey. It's like a hero's journey in a way, the legend of the hero's journey, where to develop your own autonomy in your own individual nature, you have to separate from the tribe. And that could be a group of friends, or it could be just from your family, to really, you sort of go out into the deep, dark forest to discover yourself. And then after this kind of self-enlightenment or self-discovery, supposedly, as the legend goes, you come back and you make peace with your family. And that is exactly what happened for me.
Yeah, me too. But, I didn't go in community like you did. Like you let go of one tribe and embraced another one, it seems.
Yeah.
And that was like what? You were in community for what, 13 years, I read? Is that right?
Yeah. So I say I went for 10 days and I stayed for 13 years.
And you talk about going through that process of, just being there and kind of, I don't know, what would you say, working up the ranks, like up to becoming ultimately a monk. Is that right?
Yeah. They basically put you into whatever job is needed at the time. So I remember I started in veggie prep in the kitchen, and then when we moved up to Shadowbrook, they put me into the purchasing department. So I was horrible with money. I mean, I was a musician and pretty much was eating hand to mouth, working gigs and all that. I mean, I always had enough money, but I never managed it or even figured out how to buy things or whatever. And here I am in purchasing, buying stuff for 350 residents and 250 guests. It was like, oh no.
So did it grow? Like you said, they moved. Did they move is that when they moved from Pennsylvania to?
Yeah, they were bursting at the seams. And, it seemed like everybody who came there as a guest wanted to move in. I mean, that was my situation. I went there and it's like, oh my God, I just discovered heaven on earth and I want this. And, everyone has their own, we're all on this sacred journey. And, my parents were going through divorce right at that time. I'd just broken up with a girlfriend that I had for about 2 years or whatever. So I think a part of my psyche was seeking, I needed help. I mean, I needed support. And I think I was seeking for a family that was whole to try to heal and help me make sense of my own family that was just like undergoing a supernova explosion. So,
yeah, I get that. And I also, I spent a few summers where I would go for a week as a core faculty teacher at the Omega Institute.
Oh yeah.
And I was always kind of amazed because I was in sort of both worlds. I was in the world of the participants, but also the world of the staff where you go through the back door to get into the cafeteria,
Yeah, right.
And I was always when getting to know people on the staff over the years, it just seemed like there was a bit of a circuit where
Mm-hmm.
you could go for the season and work, and you had like a place to live and you could learn all this great stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But there was often sort of tumultuous lives that were being left behind, you know, to take a time away from, sometimes to return, sometimes not to return, it seemed.
Yeah, yeah. What an image came to mind of, just like the spiritual journey is like an estuary, or the place where the stream or the river pours into the ocean. Often there's like these really strange currents and whirlpools that form there. And, you know, that's kind of how I felt. Like my whole world was turned upside down. And to move into a world that was based in competition and dog eat dog. And I mean, you wouldn't think that of a music, but like the music profession, it's cutthroat. I mean, it's,
I know. I was in the acting world, and I did it for love, and then it became exactly what you're saying. And then I was in the music world too, and it was like this avant-garde band, and then it became the same thing. So I totally get it.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that what you think fueled your direction towards renunciation?
Yeah. I mean, the ashram was a weird mix of philosophies, and I studied a lot with scholars post Kripalu, and I learned a tremendous amount about various paths, yoga systems, traditions, and then the ethos, the philosophical lineage underlying that, which is fairly well known now. So I teach about the 3 yogic worldviews, and I don't need to go into all that, but
I wrote them down because it's so interesting, because years ago I wrote a blog post and I'm trying to sort through different philosophical viewpoints.
Yeah,
and I basically came up with the same 3, but I called them something different.
mm-hmm.
But this idea, let's name them. What are the 3 as you've named them? I'll put words into your mouth. You wrote them.
Yeah, sure. And you know, this is how I heard it taught to me. So I there's a little caveat in that, because Tantra is like, I'm not really sharing what I was taught. I'm sharing what I heard. So I'm hoping it's representative of something that's accurate. But since I'm not a scholar, you know, scholars would probably shoot some holes into it. But
I completely understand. I'm not an academic myself. I've had like these really like heavy duty academics on. I always feel a little bit intimidated.
Yeah.
But I'm like you, because I'm really interested in the ideas more than like being able to cite texts.
Yeah, sure.
So go ahead. Don't worry. Go ahead. Is what I'm trying to say.
Be careful what you ask for. So if you think of it in terms of 3 views, and there are other waves that happen, but the 3 main ones that I see are the classical view, which is Patanjali's yoga, you know, roughly 2,000 years ago. And this was a dualistic view where the universe is irreducible into 2 elements, Purusha and Prakriti. We have spirit, which is superior, and we have matter, which is everything in the way of spirit. And matter includes this body, this mind, our emotions, everything that we go through. It includes desire. So the view of the dualistic world from a renunciatory view is we need to put an end to our desires, because pleasure is the source of suffering. Pleasure only turns to pain. So desire is really what's in the way. When I get to Tantra, which is the 3rd view, desire is not part of the problem. It becomes the source of the solution. It's a complete reversal. Because in the Tantric view, it's known as non-dual, which means a unity consciousness, that the universe, out of its own desire to know itself, created you. It became you through desire. So we come to see desire in a whole new light, that desire becomes the source of the solution. For instance, Tantra asks you only 3 questions. What do you most deeply desire? What value is that to you? And what are you prepared to do about it? So this whole idea of desire was kind of a big stepping stone for me. And it was a shift of perspective. So we have this dualistic view. The whole goal is to renounce world. The renunciatory path is a rejection of the world.
Yeah, I used the word, the word I used for that was transcendental, that the whole idea was to transcend this world and get to some like otherworldly plane or something.
You got it. Because over there is better than what's here.
Yeah. I always thought that's where I started too. It's like, if I could get to samadhi, then I don't feel all this pain over my mom's death anymore or whatever. Like,
yeah. And I'm, the thing is, Tantra embraces both. And I'll get to that in a second.
Yeah. You skipped over the second.
I know. I'm coming.
You want to get to the Tantra. I do too. I'm with you, brother. I'm with you.
So look, along with this dualistic philosophy, there's spirit and there's matter, but spirit is superior.
See, that's the conversation I've been having with the scholar guys. It was all about Purusha and Prakriti, and whether like Purusha is this like higher goal or something, or giving some higher value to that, as though the Prakriti is lesser or something.
Yeah, well, in a dualistic system, that is what it is. So then even things like karma, when you think about karma in a dualistic system, we're here because we failed last time.
Right. Then there's like this kind of linear progression or something almost.
Yeah, we're trying to get off the karmic wheel of samsara, the disease of worldliness. Okay, so Tantra is going to tell you karma is the gift of your embodiment. It's only through our particular karma. The karma is the doorway in, and we're wanting to, instead of get off the wheel, it's like we want to surf the waves. Get on the board and surf this incredible life.
But you went to Tantra again. What's the second one? You said there was 3. We know the first one and the third one. Now what's the second one?
Okay, the second one is Advaita Vedanta.
Right.
So it's of the Vedas. And Anta, Vedanta, the Anta means end of the Vedas, starting pretty much with the Upanishads, which is one of the scriptures that is the beginning of the yogis. Instead of Brahmins teaching so much about the Purusha and all that, these guys are teaching about the actual experience of meditation, the direct experience.
I mean, I guess that's where it gets a little bit confusing, because Advaita Vedanta is sort of the non-dual. You're saying the classical is the dual, and then Advaita Vedanta is non-dual. But when I looked at Advaita Vedanta, there was like a bunch of different interpretations in there, and some of them were dualistic.
Yeah, there's also dualistic Tantra.
Right. Well, so I guess that's the confusing part, that it isn't as simple as dual, non-dual, right?
Right. Well, I try to break it down. Like, the whole goal of my book is I want to bring these really deep esoteric teachings into a relatable, accessible format, so people can like raise an eyebrow and say, oh, that's what that means. So Advaita Vedanta, and here's some distinctions about it, is that only the non-dual is real. Unity is all that exists. So you and I are having this conversation. You being different than me being different than you, that's all an illusion. We are just one. There's no difference. And whatever you think is difference, that's a mistaken identity. So we need to break these mistaken identities and align with universal, because everything in the material world is an illusion. It's not really there. And the analogies for that is the movie screen. So you're going through your life, and your life is projected on the screen in front of you like you're at a movie. And the movie is not real, but we're seeing it, and we think it's real, but it's really just a screen of light on the background. They're saying you are that screen of light. This movie you're projecting, that's not real. And they call that Maya.
Right. The word I used for that one was transformational. So the first one was transcendental. This one was like you transform your sense of self or something like that.
Yeah, but it's still saying that life is a problem and I have the solution.
That's right. You still have to do something. Like, yeah. I know what you mean. Like, you're totally already one. You're already whole. But there's a but. There's a but on it. There's something that has to happen, a transformation that occurs for you to then realize it.
Well, and the whole difference between Advaita Vedanta and Tantra is that, like classical yoga, we acknowledge that duality is real, that difference exists and it's real. It's not an illusion. You stub your toe on the step, that hurts. That's real. You can't deny it. And Tantra also believes in the non-dual to this degree, that everything in the physical universe is the expression of consciousness.
Right. I use the word sacrosanctual. Like, it's just inherent. It's inherent to you.
Yeah. So what we see as non-dual is that, yes, there is oneness. So we align with Advaita Vedanta, but we see that everything of difference is actually real, not an illusion. And that we do have the word Maya in Tantra, but in Tantra, Maya means to take measure of. Maya becomes the cosmic mirror that when we pass through it, we recognize the divine in ourselves. So we realize that we are creating our reality, of course, along with grace and nature and everything else. It's not just us creating it. But the idea is we need to take measure of our lives and create the Maya that we want to live in.
Right. Now, I want to come back to this place we arrived in Tantra, but we were somewhere else before we went here. We were talking about you choosing to be renunciate.
All right.
And then you jumped to talk to the stuff you learned after you left Kripalu, which I appreciate. But I want to get to that. I want to go back to that process, because you started out as a renunciate, and then you got to a place that then opened you up to all of this stuff.
You know what it was?
What's that?
Triathlons.
I was reading about that. That's such a funny thing about that, because you talk about how there's all these, you refer to them as like tapas, like these like rules, basically, all the restrictions on food and the restrictions on behavior. And that's even before you became full monkhood. Yeah.
So you have to understand, Kripalu, the philosophy, Amrit Desai is not a scholar. He's a Kundalini Shaktipat master. And his teacher.
Well, what does that mean? That's scary, because Kundalini's got its problems too now. When you say Kundalini Shaktipat master, are you implying it has some special power?
Not special, but someone who's tapped into the power everybody has. So Kundalini is not the method branded Kundalini. Kundalini as the name of the goddess, who's the serpent, which represents a heightened state of prana. Prana is the life force. So prana is animating our breath and everything. But when that awakens and gets heightened, triggered by grace or triggered by a guru or triggered by a mantra or just life experience, it speeds up your evolutionary impulse, and it opens chakras, like it opens doors. Like every chakra in my body opened, and I was peering through the lens of this wide open vastness of universal consciousness into a new paradigm that freaked me out. And it took me a while.
I'm sorry to jump in, but I appreciate what you're saying. And the reason I'm probing is that your descriptions in your book of your experience of these things, on one hand, I had similar experiences, but not the same. I had what I would call, I don't know, otherworldly experiences in terms of seeing colors and seeing things. Like I've had some experiences like that, but I wasn't in community and surrounded by what you have to acknowledge are kind of cult dynamics at play.
Yeah. I mean, I would say cult, coming from the word culture, means the communities we surround ourselves in. So everybody's in a cult. But I think when people today use the word cult, they mean there's a manipulation for sinister reasons.
Not always for sinister reasons, but a manipulation of sorts, at least.
Yeah, yeah. And although that was the end result, it's not such a black and white issue. And I'll say that about ashrams, gurus, and I'll also say that about Kundalini, that when you have, let's just call it a heart opening, an energy awakening, that it's going to take on a unique pattern and flow according to what that individual person needs. So like your experience was the perfect experience for you to have the awakening, to let's say, assist you in moving towards the fuller expression of your life agenda,
Right, but that happened to me, and again, I just was fresh reading your book like yesterday about this particular section where you basically talk about having what seemed to me a full-on mental break.
Yeah, I had. Well, here's the thing. I acknowledge it was very similar to a psychotic break. And this is one of the other points of Tantra, and also one of the points of my book, is our life progresses based on the meaning that we assign to every experience we have. So I could assign the meaning that I'm sick, I had a psychotic break, I feel shame about that, and I need to get my life together. Or I could see that experience as a complete Shakti awakening that changed the course of the rest of my life. And I bow to that experience, and it has become the key that has unlocked a root so deep. It's like a primordial root into cosmic creativity. We could say that opened me to a source consciousness that has been informing me ever since. And I choose the latter,
I mean, I can appreciate that. I'm curious, have you had other breaks like that since then? It was just that one time.
That's why, for everyone it's unique. And what happened for me is I was 10 days into the program, and then I had all these intense fears. I lost some aspect of my grounded consciousness. I was in the universe somewhere, and went through all these purifications and emotions, and was in the hospital for exactly 10 days. And after 10 days, I emerged like a new person, like something was different in me.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to me because, if you were, let's say, if you were like bipolar or whatever, you would have likely had another break in theory. Because, when people talk about having a disorder like that, it's not just something that goes away.
Yeah.
Although I guess sometimes some people could. Although, I mean, again, it seemed like you went to such an out place. I went in that direction, but never as far as you. I'm thinking of this moment of like, you're in the hospital and your aunt was there and she was beautiful and you tried to kiss her. Like, I just like this stuff. I like, and it goes to like almost sometimes like that crazy wisdom place.
Yeah.
Which I've met. Like I met Yuji Krishnamurti, who was probably the closest kind of crazy wisdom teacher I ever met personally.
Wow. Yeah.
And I certainly, like you say, I only spent a few hours with him. That few hours absolutely had a massive impact on him. And it's hard to explain that. He wasn't a guru of mine. I didn't, you know what I mean? I didn't do any of these things you're talking about, I've often been very sort of like skeptical of the idea of Shakti put in general.
Yeah.
But I can't deny that 3 hours had a huge impact on me.
Yeah. So that was a form of Shakti that you received. Look, I believe in the transmission of spiritual energy through lineages and through traditions. It doesn't have to come through a tradition. It can come through grace. Like grace is spewing its cosmic magic dust everywhere. It's up to us to be open to it. And when you open to a certain degree, universe comes in and just carries you along a little bit further to open us and to release what blocks us from that, grief and regret and worry. And all the time, like we have so many psychological patternings. These are the samskaras, these are the imprints, the grooves of consciousness that keep us in suffering.
I agree. I mean, that's why I continue to pursue these inquiries. I guess when you say lineage and tradition, my ears perked up. Like, what do you mean by lineage and tradition? And if you're talking about like teachings being passed from teacher to student through time, what do we do about the fact that all of these lineage holders turned out to be like abusers of one sort or another? Like,
I know.
How do we, because what you're saying, and this is the conversation I've been having, my own teacher had his issues. And so there's things that I learned and you keep going to them. And I promise you, we're going to go there. We're going to go there, Todd, fully. I promise. But those places that we're going are like, those are the things that we learn that are good, but we often learn them from people who I don't feel like I could support now.
Right, exactly.
Like a confusing thing to reconcile. And that's where my probing of you is coming, because you were so deep in a community. And I guess, what was your like personal relationship to Amrita Desai? Like, did you spend like one-to-one time with him ever? Or what was that relationship like?
We were really close. I wasn't like one of his attendants or one of his assistants who they kind of could shoot the breeze together. He was always the guru for me. But I was on his massage team, and we would do these marathon, super intense massages. He loved massage. He got a massage every day. And he needed it so deep that we'd be in the room. I'd have my elbow like in his shoulder, in his back, or in his butt, the glutes. And I would have to walk up the wall to put all of my weight and my elbow in there, and he would just go deeper, more. So I was
Todd. That sounds kind of crazy, right? You massaged your guru for hours. That's a lot of devotion.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and we were trained to do guru massage. I mean, it was great, and it wasn't like he was hitting on us or whatever. No, it was a beautiful way that he could receive, and it was such a gift. Anyway, I would be buzzing for hours after those massages. And I was also on his workout team, so we would lift weights, we would swim together, and I actually taught him yoga. He really wanted to learn alignment, and because I came from a Iyengar tradition, I would try to teach him, and that was a trip. So he just could not engage his muscles at all. He had no proprioception. I mean, it was really weird. I did see a little bit of improvement. Like, to my credit, I did help him a little, but I recognized pretty early on that his thing really wasn't about alignment. I mean, his claim to fame was meditation in motion, where he would tune in to the prana shakti and let that move his body. It was very profound when he did those flows. He said to me once, we were walking, we could walk, different disciples would be able to walk him home from satsang. And it's usually at night. It was, beautiful summer night, stars were out, and it was just so intimate. And I felt so close to him. And he just put his arm around me and he said, "You feel like my spiritual son." And I felt that kind of closeness with him, like fatherly almost. So, everyone has their own relationship with the guru. So that was mine. And I just wanted to say that there was a lot of blending of different philosophies there. So there was the intense austerity to subdue desires in the body from the classical tradition, including celibacy.
If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.